Hello and welcome to another edition of the Swords of St. Michael series on the 12 steps of humility and pride. We're about to get right into chapter 10, which is on one of the biggest problems in liberation, deliverance, and exorcism: curiosity. So don't go away. Grab your popcorn, grab something cold to drink, and get right back here. This is going to be a long challenge. However, it's going to be quite interesting. So I'm hoping if you're new here, you're going to like this and give it a thumbs up. We're going to start with our intro right about right now. Hello, and I am your hostess, for this series, Sister Farah Rose, OFS. I am professed religious Franciscan lay minister, and I operate in deliverance, healing, and exorcism in both of the Swords of St. Michael and locally for the diocese. So I am really enjoying presenting these formation chapters to those of you that are interested and have requested so. This week we are working on, as I said, chapter 10 of the 12 Steps of Humility and Pride by St. Bernard of Clairvaux. We are going to outline, this is one of the biggest chapters here, and this one, chapter 10, is on the first degree curiosity. And as many of you who do follow this channel, Swords of St. Michael, covers liberation, oppression, possession, exorcism, and we're starting with mental illnesses. If you need more information, you go to www.swordsofstmichael.org for more prayers, healing, and deliverance information. Or if you need something to pray with, if you need some inspiration for your prayer, you can go to www.prayersbythebead.com. In this week's chapter, if you have been here before, let's get our notebook. Let's get our pen and paper together if you're new. I'm hoping that you'll give this long video a lesson and maybe see if you might want to come back and participate in the rest by going back to the beginning. So let's pray ourselves in and let's start chapter 10. Curiosity, the opposite of modesty. In nomine Patri et Filio et Spiritus Sanctus, sic erat in principio et nunc et semper et saecula saeculorum. Sancta Michael Arcangele, defende nos in prelio contra nequitiam et insidiis diaboli est presidium. Imperire Deus supplicis te percamur tuque. Princeps maletia celestis et animaliosque spiritus malignos, qui ad perditionem animarum pervaganta, in mundo divina virtute in infernum detrude. Amen. Our study prayer. Suscipe. Suscipe Domine, universum meam libertatem, accipe memoriam intellectum, atque voluntatem omnem, quid abavio vel possideo, mihi largitis ex, et tibi totum restitsuo, actui, prorsus voluntati tradu gubernandum, amore tui, solum, cum gratia tui mihi dones, et dives sum satis ec aluit quiquam ultra posco. Amen. The 12 Steps of Humility and Pride by Bernard of Clairvaux. Chapter 10. The first degree, curiosity, the opposite of modesty, especially of the eyes. The first degree of pride is curiosity. This you may detect by the following signs. Look at that monk, whom you have hitherto supposed to be a sensible man. He is now taken to staring about him, whether he is standing up, walking about, or sitting down. He thrusts his head forward and pricks up his ears. From his outward movements you can clearly see the inward change that he has undergone. For it is the froward man who winketh with the eye, presseth with the foot, and speaketh with the finger. And from the unusual movements of his body is seen to have lately contracted disease of the soul, the careless sluggishness of which in self-examination makes it inquisitive about others. So, since it takes no heed to itself, it is sent out of doors to feed the kids. And as these are the types of sin, I may quite correctly give the title of quote-unquote kids to the eyes and the ears. Since as death comes into the world through sin, so does sin enter the mind through these apertures. The curious man, therefore, busies himself with feeding them, though he takes no trouble to ascertain the state in which he has left himself. Yet if, O man, you look carefully into yourself, it is indeed a wonder that you can ever look at anything else. You inquisitive fellow, listen to Solomon. You silly fellow, hearken to the wise man. As he says, with all watchfulness guard thy heart. In other words, keep all your senses on the watch to protect that which is the source of life. For whither, inquisitive man, will you retire from your own presence? To whom will you, in the meantime, entrust yourself? How dare you, who have sinned against heaven, lift up your eyes to the sky? Look down to earth if you want to recognize yourself. It will show you what you are. For earth thou art, and to earth thou shalt go. Now, there are two reasons for which you may raise your eyes without being to blame for doing so. One is to seek, and the other is to render assistance. David raised his eyes to the mountains for the former, and the Lord lifted his over the crowd for the latter purpose. The motive of the one was misfortune, that of the other was mercy. Neither was to blame. If you likewise, with due regard to place, time, and occasion, look up when you or a brother are in distress, I not only do not blame you, I highly commend you. For misfortune allows the one action, mercy approves the other. But in different circumstances, I should call you an imitator, not of the prophet nor of the Lord, but of Dinah or of Eve, verily, of Satan himself. For Dinah, when she went out to feed her kids, was snatched away from her father, and her maidenhood was taken from her. O Dinah, what need was there for thee to look on strange woman? Was it necessary? Did it serve any useful purpose? Or was it done out of mere curiosity? Thy look may have no purpose, but it is not without purpose that men gaze on thee. There is curiosity in thy look, but more in the look that is turned on thee. Who could have supposed that thy curious carelessness or careless curiosity would afterwards prove to be not reckless but ruinous to thee, thy friends, and thine enemies? And thou, O Eve, was placed in paradise, that thou mightest work with thine husband, and bestow thine care upon him. And if thou hadst discharged thy duty, thou wouldst eventually have passed into a better sphere, where there would have been no need for thee to be engaged in any work, or to be beset by any care. Leave was given to thee to eat of every tree in paradise, except that one which is called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. For if the others are good, and have a good savor, what need is there to eat of one which also has an evil savor? Not to be more wise than it behoveth to be wise. For to know evil is not knowledge, but folly. So preserve what is given, await what is promised, avoid what is forbidden, lest thou lose what is allowed. Why lookest thou so eagerly for thy death? Why dost thou so often cast in that direction those wandering eyes of thine? What pleasure hast thou in looking on that which thou mayest not eat? Perchance thou dost reply, I stretch forth my eyes not from my hand. It is not looking but eating that is forbidden. May I not turn those eyes, which God has placed under my control, in any direction that I please? To which the apostle shall answer, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. Although it may not be in itself a guilty act, it affords an incentive to sin. For if thy mind had not shown insufficient attention to its own condition, it would have had time for idle curiosity. Although there may be no offense, there is an opportunity as well as a suggestion to offend and a reason for offending. For while thou art thinking of something else, the serpent creeps craftily into thy heart and addresses thee in an alluring tone. He overcomes thy reason with his enticements, allies thy fears with falsehoods, and tells thee that thou art in no danger of death. He increases thy distress as he stimulates thine appetite. He sharpens curiosity and strengthens desire. At length he offers what is forbidden and takes away what is allowed. He presents thee with fruit and deprives thee of paradise. Thou takest poison, thou wilt perish thyself and wilt bring forth children who will perish. Thou hast sacrificed salvation without losing the power to give birth. We are born, we die, and thus we are born only to die because we were dead before we were born. And as for thee, pattern of perfection, thou wast not placed in paradise, but in Eden, the garden of God. What more couldst thou reasonably desire? Filled with wisdom and exalted in honor, thou shouldst have expected nothing higher and worked for nothing stronger than thyself. Remain where thou art, lest thou shalt fall from thy position. If thou walkest among things that are too great and wonderful for thee, but why dost thou sometimes turn around and look to the north? I seek thee. I already detect thee peering too inquisitively into the unknown heights above thee, and I will place, sayest thou, my throne towards the north. The other dwellers in the heaven are standing, while thou alone dost desire to sit. and does thereby disturb the harmony of the brethren, the peace of the whole heavenly community. And so far as it lies in thy power to do so, the tranquility of the Trinity. Does this curiosity carry thee so far, thou wretched being, that with unrivaled presumption thou dost not scruple to give offense to the citizens and to do injury to the king? Thousands of thousands minister to him, and 10 times 100,000 stand before him, where no one is allowed to sit, but he alone, who sitteth upon the cherubims and receiveth the ministration of others. And dost thou, how shall I put it, claiming a wider outlook, a more incisive scrutiny, and a freer entrance than that of the others, place a seat for thyself in heaven, that thou mayest be on a level with the Most High? What is thine object? On what doest thou reply? Thou fool, estimate thy powers, think of the result, consider the process. Dost thou presume on the knowledge or the ignorance or the willingness or on the reluctance of the Most High? But how can he, whose purpose is all good and whose knowledge is unlimited, either consent to or be aware of thine evil design? Dost thou think that though he undoubtedly knows and disapproves of it, he is unable to prevent it? But unless, indeed, thou art doubtful whether thou art a created being, I cannot suppose that thou canst doubt the omnipotence, omniscience, and excellence of thy Creator, seeing that he was able to create thee out of nothing, and knowing that thou would return out to be, willed to make thee the powerful being that thou art. When therefore thou thinkest that God will tolerate that of which he disapproves and has the power to prohibit, do I, perchance, see in thee the completion, aye, the origin of that idea which after thee, because of thee, is constantly held by those like thee on earth, and which is embodied in the common saying, "An usurper keeps reckless followers." Is thine eye evil because he is good? This wicked presumption of thine on his benevolence is produced in thee an insolent disregard of his knowledge, and a daring defiance of his power. For this, and nothing less than this, thou unholy one, is thy train of thought. This is the wickedness that thou dost devise on thy bed, and sayest, thinkest thou that the Creator will destroy his own work? I am well aware that no thought of mine escapes God, because he is God. Nor does any such thought please him, because he is God and good. Nor can I escape his hand, if he so wishes, because he is mighty. But need this be a cause of dread to me? For if through his goodness he can have no pleasure in evil done by me, how much less can he derive it from evil action of his own? I should call it evil on my part to wish to oppose his will, and on his part to avenge himself. He therefore cannot wish to take vengeance for any crime, since he neither will nor can part with his inherent goodness. It is thyself, thou wretch, alone, that thou deceivest, not God. Thou deceivest yourself, I repeat, and thy wickedness lies to thyself, not to God. Thou dost indeed act deceitfully, but he detects thy motive. Thus thou deceivest thyself, not God, and in return for his great goodness thou dost contemplate great evil towards him. Thy wickedness naturally leads thee to hate him. For what can be more unjust than that the Creator should be scorned by thee for the very reasons for which he most deserves thy love? What can be more outrageous than that thou hast no doubt that the power of God shown in thy creation could be used for thy destruction, thou dost yet rely on his abundant kindness, and that this should lead thee to hope that he will be unwilling to exercise his vindictive power. Will thou repay good with evil, and love with hatred? Now I say that this malice is deserving, not of passing indignation, but of an abiding wrath. For it is thy desire and hope to be on an equality with the most gracious and most high Lord, although that is not his wish. Thou desirest that he shall always have before his eyes the distressing sight of thine unwelcome presence. And thou thinkest that, though he is able to cast thee down, he will not do so, but that he will prefer himself to suffer than to allow thee to perish. It is undoubtedly in his power to overthrow thee, if such be his will, but in thine opinion his kindness will not allow him to entertain such a wish. If he be such as thou supposest him to be, it is clear that thy conduct in not loving him is so much the baser. And if he does not allow the action to be taken against himself rather than take action against thee, how great must be thy malice in having no consideration for him who disregards himself in sparing thee. But it is inconceivable that he who is perfect can fail to be both kind and just. It is not as though kindness and justice cannot exist together. Kindness is really better when it is just than when it is slack. Nay, more kindness without justice is not a virtue. It therefore appears that thou remainest ungrateful for the loving kindness of God, whereby thou wast created without exertion on thy part, but thou fearest not his justice, of which thou hast had no experience, and dost therefore audaciously incur guilt, for which thou dost falsely promise thyself impunity. Now mark that thou wilt find him whom thou hast known to be so kind to be also righteous, and thou wilt thyself fall into a ditch which thou hast dug for thy Creator. Thy design seems to be to inflict on him an injury which he is able to avoid if he wishes to do so, a wish in which thou thinkest that he cannot entertain, as he will not be wanting in that kindness which has led him never within thine experience to punish anybody. The righteousness God will most justly retaliate by punishing thee, since he neither can nor ought to allow such a slight on his goodness to remain unpunished. He may, however, so moderate the severity of his sentence that, if thou art willing to return to reason, he will not refuse thee pardon. But such is thy hardness and impenitent heart, that thou art capable of such a wish, and therefore cannot escape the penalty. But now listen to the accusation against thee. Heaven, saith he, is on my throne, and the earth is my footstool. He did not say east or west or any one region in the heaven, but the whole heaven is my throne. Thou must not interfere or therefore seat thyself in a portion of the heaven, since he has chosen the whole of it for himself. Thou cannot place thyself on earth, for it is his footstool. For the earth is a solid body on which is seated the church, founded on the strong rock. What wilt thou do? Driven out of heaven? Thou canst not remain on the earth. Choose then for thyself a place in the air, not for session, but for flight, so that thou who didst attempt to shatter the security of eternity shall pay the penalty of thine own unrest. For while thou art driven to and fro between heaven and earth, the Lord is seated on a throne high and elevated, and the whole earth is full of his majesty, so that thou can find no place except in the air. For the seraphim, with their wings of contemplation, fly from the throne to the footstool, and from the footstool to the throne, while with their other wings they cover the head and the feet of the Lord. And I think they are purposely so placed, as the access to paradise was barred against sinful men by the cherubim. So, also, shall a limit be set to thy curiosity by the seraphim. The result will be that thou wilt no longer, with more impudence than prudence, investigate the secrets of heaven, nor wilt thou discover the mysteries of the church on earth, but shall find a home only in the hearts of the proud, who neither deign to live on earth like other men, nor fly like the angels to heaven. But although his head is hidden from thee in heaven, and his feet on earth, thou may, as it were, be allowed to see and to envy some part of what lies between, while thou art suspended in the air, and dost behold the angels descending and ascending past thee. Thou art altogether ignorant of what they hear in heaven or tell on earth. O Lucifer, thou who didst rise in the morning, surely a bearer of no longer of light, but of night, aye, even of death. Thy proper course was from the east to the south. And dost thou invert the order, and perversely tend toward the north? In proportion to thy haste to rise is the rapidity of thy decline and fall. Yet, thou curious one, I should wish to investigate more closely the object of thy curiosity. I will place, sayest thou, my throne towards the north, and as thou art a spirit, I think that neither worth nor throne is to be understood in the local or literal sense, for I suppose that it is by the north is meant evil men, and by my throne thy control over them. For in the knowledge, the foreknowledge of God, thou hast from thy chosen proximity to him a clearer insight into the future than had others. And as these were neither enlightened by any ray of wisdom, nor warmed by the love of the Spirit, thou didst find in them, as it were, thine opportunity. Thou establish thy rule over them, so that thou mightest pour into them some of thy clever cunning, and influence them with thy wicked warmth, so that as the Most High controlled by all the sons of obedience by his wisdom and goodness, thou mightst govern these by thy cunning wickedness and wicked cunning, and in this respect thou mightst resemble him. But I am surprised that since in God's foreknowledge thou didst foresee thy rule, thou didst not in the like manner foresee thy ruin. For if thou did foresee it, what madness it was to be so wickedly eager for dominion as to prefer rule and wretchedness to submission and happiness. Or was it not better for thee to be a partner in those regions of light than ruler of those dark places? But it is more likely that thou did not look forward, either for the reason which I gave above, that in thy reliance on the kindness of God, thou didst say in thine heart, He will not require it, and did therefore wickedly offend him. Or because, when thou didst see thy rule, the beam of pride at once rose in thine eye, which through its interference was unable to discern its danger. In like manner, Joseph did not foresee his sale, though he had foreseen his promotion. And this, although the sale was to precede the promotion, I should not from this conclude that the great patriarch was guilty of pride, but as his experience proves that those who possess the spirit of prophecy must not be supposed to have foreseen nothing because they did not foresee everything. Someone may perhaps maintain that the fact that this youth recorded his dreams, of whose symbolic significance he was at the time unaware, was a mark of self-sufficiency. I still think that this should be ascribed to their symbolic character or to his boyish innocence rather than to conceit. As if there were such conceit, he was able to atone for it by his subsequent painful experiences. For revelations of a character pleasing to themselves are sometimes made to certain persons, and though such knowledge must inevitably engender conceit in the human mind, the prediction may nevertheless be fulfilled, albeit in such a way, though, that the vanity which has caused even a slight delight in the importance of the revelation shall not be unpunished. For a physician uses not only ointment but fire and iron, with which he cuts out or cauterizes everything which is useless for the treatment of the wound, so that there may be no obstacle to the remedial working in the ointment. In like manner does God, as the physician of souls, prescribe and administer to a soul of such disposition temptations and troubles, in order that chastened and humbled it may turn joy into sorrow, and think the revelation is a delusion. The result is that vanity disappears through the truth of the revelation is not impaired. Thus Paul's tendency to self-examination is checked by the thorn in his flesh, while he is himself uplifted repeated revelations. Thus, want of faith in Zacharias is punished by loss of speech, yet the declaration of an angel that the truth would be made clear during his lifetime is unaltered. Thus again, by honor and dishonor, do the saints make progress. Among the special gifts which each receives, they are only too well aware of the existence of them in that vanity which is common to mankind, so that while they know themselves to be the possessors of supernatural favor, they may ever remember whom they truly are. But what about revelations to mere curiosity? I took the opportunity of dealing with these in a digression when I tried to show that the wicked angel before his fall was allowed to foresee that dominion which he afterwards acquired over wicked men, but not to anticipate his own condemnation. That is a matter about which questions of small moment may be raised, which it is easier to ask them than to answer, and of which the sum and substance is but this, that he fell from the truth because of his idle speculation led him to unlawful desire, and thus to presumptuous aspiration. Curiosity, therefore, rightly claims the first place among the degrees of pride, and is thus revealed as the beginning of all sin. But unless this is suppressed very speedily, it will soon develop into a careless frame of mind, which constitutes the second degree. Whew. Mercy. This is a lot to unpack, isn't it? I am hoping that you are enjoying this chapter. I realize this is a lot to dive into, a lot to delve into. Chapter 10 has just been jam-packed. St. Bernard of Clairvaux has really delivered on this one. And as we look at this chapter, goodness gracious, how much clearer can it be to us when we look at this chapter? We realize how powerful curiosity is. If you are new to the topic of deliverance, healing, liberation, and exorcism, you can ask just about any exorcist and they will tell you the number one invitation for the beginnings of oppression is curiosity. Curiosity. And this is what we're covering tonight. So, if you're new, I'm hoping you're enjoying this and you'll give us a thumbs up, a likes, and you'll share the content. Click on the little bell icon so that you can get notifications when we do more videos like these. And start at the beginning if you're new, because there's so much in this book. If you do not have a copy of this, The 12 Steps of Humility and Pride, the link is below. You can download it for free and print it up, and just read it as we go along to follow along. Get out your notebooks, practice books, because we're going to do some practical applications on this chapter 10. There is so very much powerful information in here. I call this, in what I do in this chapter, I called this, I should say, this list of the list of minor oppression here. I call it diabolic oppression obsession, because when St. Bernard of Clairvaux is talking about how do we get enticed into curiosity? How do we start looking about? How do we start looking over there and looking over there? How do we get this invitation? Well, as this chapter points out, we get an increase of distress. Our appetites, our sensate appetites are stimulated, and we're thinking, Then that stimulation of the appetite sharpens our curiosity, so we start looking more and we start looking further, equaling a strengthening of a desire that is so strong it cannot be denied. This is so dangerous. This is so incredibly dangerous. And then half of the way through, when St. Bernard was talking, I have to tell you that this entire Sword of St. Michael, the videos on here are here to educate you what to be aware of. It is not for curiosity to know about evil. St. Bernard of Clairvaux points out in this chapter, to know evil and to desire to know evil is folly. It is stupid. It is scary. It is open to curiosity. And this is really dangerous. This is so dangerous. He's so right. We ought not to give in to an unnatural or an unproductive curiosity about any evil. Any evil. So I've written down something that we can work on and we can meditate for this week as we go forward for this chapter. And I've made some notes on the Bible verses that I thought were excellent for reflection. I'd like us to take a look, because in each one of our lives, we have the opportunity to see different things. We have the opportunity to purchase different things. We have the opportunity to gossip, to covet, to take something that kind of is ours, but may not be ours. So I'd like us all to look and reflect on how we bring ourselves to see and hear things that feed our curiosity. Maybe it's some gossip at work. Maybe it is possibly a movie or an entertaining video that brings up some practice that you've never heard of before. And you get curious and you start researching it and you start Googling it and you start taking notes. And it turns out to be very evil. How do we, as those 3-4 indicators are, how do we address distress? When curiosity says, you must know. Think about what's going on in the world today. All the deaths, all the shutdowns, no jobs, no goods, no this. Our distress is increased 1,000-fold every time we watch anything on the news. And once that distress sets in, oh my gosh, it stimulates the appetite for what? For knowledge. We got to know more. We got to seek more. We got to look more. We got to turn on more channels. We have to look to different sources because we must know. And what happens then? Our curiosity gets more. And that curiosity leads to more wanting to know and more wanting to know. And it's a vicious cycle because the more you want to know, our distress is increased more. We have to know more. It stimulates our appetite. And between all of this that's going on inside of us, our desire is just, it's flaming. It's on fire. And it's almost impossible to turn it off and not look and not listen. I'd like us to pray about that and meditate on that this week. What ways can we begin to curb those invitations to desire in our life this week? This is going to be an ongoing one. There is no way. We can't expect to tackle everything at once. We can't expect that we're going to be just perfect at any one of these lessons. But what we can do is we can strive to grow that virtue. We can strive to catch ourselves in the dangerous circle of distress, seeking, curiosity, knowledge, the constant circle of knowing more about that evil. As always, Swords of St. Michael is here to help you win that spiritual fight and win it right. Never forget the battle's already been won. I'm hoping you like this video. Give it a thumbs up, like, and share the video content if you can. Thank you. God bless you for coming. And I look forward to seeing you next weekend as my cold and cough has gotten much better for another chapter, chapter 11 in this Bernard of Clairvaux, the 12 Steps of Humility and Pride. Thank you for joining me. My name is Farah, Sister Farah Rose. God bless and good night.